Speaking of that, let's go back into the courtroom now. The state has called their first witness. His name is Shelton. He was the EMT there that arrived on the scene. He's going to describe what that was like. Let's get back into the courtroom.
You know, I done mine in 2014 or 15.
Okay. And when did you become an advanced EMT?
It was around that 2014, 15, I'm sorry.
That's okay. How long had you been how long had you been in emergency medical services around the time of August the 10th of 2019?
10 years. I technically was licensed, I'm sorry. I was licensed in January of 2009. I'm sorry.
Okay. On August the 10th of 2019, you recall being dispatched to 1405 East Unaka in Johnson City?
Yes.
Okay. How are you able to remember that?
Well, there's a couple different reasons that I can remember that particular call. One being the smell of the house and the heat that was in the house that day. The other being the injury to the patient.
Okay. How many calls do you think you have been on at that point in your career?
Hundreds.
Okay. And how serious were the calls that you had been on?
I mean, I've run several cardiac arrests, car wrecks. I mean, just various different health issues, strokes, heart attacks. I mean, there was several, not including the pediatric calls that I had ran. So I had ran several bad calls.
But this particular call stands out in the midst of all that.
Yeah, I would say overall of my career, this is in my top 5 that I remember.
Okay. And do you recall what the nature of the dispatch was?
We were dispatched out routine traffic on a fall that had happened about a week ago.
Okay. So routine traffic, what does that mean?
No lights, no sirens.
Okay. What happened when you arrived at 1405?
When we got there and we got out of the truck, and as we were making our way into the home, I was met by two people that were in the house. I was met by an elderly black male and a black female.
Okay. Do you see that person in the courtroom, the female?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you point the person out for the record?
She's right there.
Would the record reflect he identified the defendant, Karen Murray?
All right, the record will reflect that Mr. Shelton has identified Ms. Karen Murray, City Councilor Taylor.
And is that 1405 East Unaka, is that in Washington County?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry, Watauga. I've been saying the wrong address. 1405 East Watauga.
Yes, ma'am.
Unaka, Watauga. So you were met at the door. What do you recall about that, being met at the door by those two individuals?
The elderly male, when he first approached me, he said that they were doing the best they could. He kept emphasizing that they were doing the best they could with what they had.
Okay. At some point, did you enter the residence?
Yes.
Okay. What did you notice about the residence once you entered it?
The overpowering smell of urine.
Okay. What did you do after you entered the residence?
I continued to take information from the male that I was talking to.
Okay. And who was running that call? Was anybody else running that call with you?
Yes, Paramedic Jenkins was with me that day.
Okay. And you know where was he when you were trying to obtain the information?
When we went into the home, I stayed with the family and was getting information, and he went to the patient.
Okay. Do you recall where the patient was located in the house?
She was, when you come through the front door, there was like a living room. She was down the hall and to the left in a room.
Okay. And did anything change about the odor of urine that you were smelling as you entered the home?
It continued to get worse.
Okay. So at some point, did you make contact with the patient?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us how that occurred.
As I was continuing to get information, we were going down the hall back that way to the patient's room, and my partner steps out and says, "You need to get in here." And I asked him what was going on, and he said, "Well, go in and look at her ankle." He said, "Go in and look at her ankle."
Okay. And When you entered that room, tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what you saw.
I saw an elderly black female laying in a bed. She was laying on her back. There was no sheet on this bed. It was one of the plastic mattresses like you see in a hospital. There was no sheet on the bed. She had on a white T-shirt. She had vomited at some point, and the vomit was still on the T-shirt. Again, the smell of urine was rough, and it being hot in that house, it just made it 10 times worse. When I looked at the patient's ankle and looked at the injury that we were called out on, it was a compound ankle fracture, so the bone was sticking out of the skin. I remember as I looked and assessed the patient, the bed had urine in it, and it had been there long enough that it had turned colors. It was brown. The patient had fecal matter on her, had fecal matter around her ankle. It was rough to even look at. The 10 years that I had been on the ambulance, that was one of the roughest scenes that I had witnessed at that point. Just the out and out neglect.
The fecal matter that was on her on the bed, did it look fresh to you, or?
No, it was dry, and it was in various stages of drying. It had been there for a bit.
And what led you to that?
Well, the way it was dried, and there was also some mold on some of the fecal matter.
You said that you had assessed the patient. What were you doing to assess the patient at that time?
I had come in and was looking at her ankle and was just checking her over to make sure that there was no other injuries. The obvious was the ankle.
Was there, you said the obvious, was there anything else you noticed about her?
She had her medical history. She had had a stroke, so she had contractures. So she was bound. Her arms were up and contracted. She was nonverbal. One of her eyes was swollen and matted shut. There was also some things around her neck. It was a yeast infection that was around her neck, and that just does not happen overnight.
Okay. So as part of the training you received during the EMT, that includes fractures?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was there anything of significant, aside from the bone being exposed, about the fracture that you noticed?
Yeah, it was discolored. The bone was discolored, and it was dried at the end. That is not something that happens within just a few hours. That's days of that bone being exposed.
Okay. Do you recall if you saw blood around the injury?
Yes, it was dried.
Was there any fresh blood around the injury?
No, ma'am.
Do you recall whether or not you saw any bandaging?
There was no bandaging.
I'm going to ask the bailiff to hand you. I'm going to ask the bailiff to hand you a photo. Do you recognize what's in that photo?
Yes, I recognize her ankle and recognize the fracture.
Okay.
But I will say there is no fecal matter on that picture.
Okay. And you said there was fecal matter on the. Okay. I'm going to ask the bailiff to hand you. A blue Sharpie.
Yes, ma'am.
And I want you to mark on that photo where you saw fecal matter.
And Mike, within the very first 10 minutes of testimony in this trial, to me it indicates these kids should have known this was neglect. The old fecal matter, the old urine, the bone sticking out, days that the bone had been exposed. Problem.
Yeah, and you know, they talked about it in their opening statement, the defense, about the definition of neglect. Basically, it's providing care necessary to maintain physical health that includes food, water, medical treatment, basic hygiene that a reasonable person would consider necessary.
Reasonable person.
How do you get over that? How do you
Yeah.
not know?
Yeah.
And so it's a tough.
Hard case to listen
Yeah.
to, but so important. All right, we do need to take a break. When we come back, we'll have more testimony from the brother and sister murder trial. Keep it here with us on your front row seat to justice.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, is Karen Reed a killer girlfriend or the scapegoat in an elaborate cover-up? We're breaking down today's closing arguments as deliberations get underway.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
A-list actor Alec Baldwin is cast in the real-life role he never wanted.
I turn and come to the windows off.
Criminal defendant.
The Alec Baldwin manslaughter trial, coming this July, only on Court TV.
Ms. Hanley, in regards to the microscopic pieces, 1/16 of an inch by 1/16.
You have 1 minute, Mr. Lally. Wrap it up.
Yes, Your Honor. The defendant drove her vehicle in reverse for 24.2 miles per hour for 62.5 feet, struck Mr. O'Keefe, causing those catastrophic head injuries, leaving him incapacitated and freezing to death.
Mr. Lally, I have to stop you. You've gone over. Okay?
I literally have one sentence on you.
One sentence I'll give you.
From that facts and that evidence, I would submit ineluctably demonstrates her guilt on each of the indictments before you, and I would ask that you find it so. Thank you.
That was the prosecutor, Adam Lawley, being called out by the judge for going over his allotted time for that 1-hour closing argument in the killer or cover-up murder trial.
The jury began deliberating shortly after the closings, and after about 2.5 hours, they've gone home for the day without reaching a verdict. Deliberations resume tomorrow morning, I believe at 9 a.m.
Now we want to get you back to the brother and sister murder trial in Tennessee.
The jury has been listening to really what is graphic testimony about the condition that the EMTs found the victim in. It's just really something. Let's get back into court.
We would ask that be State's Exhibit 14.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Exhibit 14 without objection. Marked and moved into evidence. Exhibits 1 through 13A and B are in the record, taken and entered into evidence pursuant to the deposition for proof testimony of Dr. Christy Lawson. You will see those exhibits when her deposition is presented to you in evidence in this trial. That is why we are out of sequence. Those exhibits were pre-marked.
Can I show defense counsel where he's marked it?
All right. Did you get that marked yet? No. Okay. All right. Exhibit 14 will be marked and moved into evidence.
And just to clarify, the areas where you have the blue, is that where you saw fecal matter?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm guessing it was obvious that she needed to be transported for medical care.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Based on what you saw when you arrived, what type of call was this?
This was a trauma call.
Okay. Were you and paramedic Jenkins able to remove her from the house on your own?
No.
Okay, how was that done?
We had called the fire department to come help us to carry her out on a draw sheet.
Okay. And for us, I mean, I've learned because I've talked to you, but can you explain to everyone what a draw sheet carry is?
Basically, you put the patient on a flat sheet and you use the four corners of the sheet to carry them out is what you're doing.
Okay. And is that the process that you use to transport Miss Murray to the ambulance?
We carried her outside so we could put her on the stretcher, and then we
Okay.
took the stretcher and put her in the ambulance, yes.
Okay. How did that process go?
It went fairly well, but when we got her ready to move her, we had dressed the wound. We had put wet gauze on the end of the bone to cover it. We secured her foot and stabilized it so we could roll her onto her side opposite the injury to put her on the sheet. And when we rolled her, she yelled. She screamed in pain.
Okay. And based on your training and experience, you could tell this was a scream of pain?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Prior to moving her, were you able to give her anything for pain?
Yes, paramedic Jenkins give her something for pain.
Okay. Once you had her in the ambulance, who was in the ambulance when you transported her?
It was myself, paramedic Jenkins, and a fireman that was in the back of the ambulance.
Why were the other firemen present?
The other fireman was present in the back of the ambulance just in case we needed extra help giving her treatment.
Okay. One moment, please.
Joining us to discuss, trial and civil attorney and Temple University Law School professor Dante Mills. Dante, thank you for joining both of us here. You know, I go back to some of this testimony, things like it was obvious that she needed medical treatment, that she yelled in pain when we tried to roll her. These are things to me that indicate these two defendants should have known they were neglecting her, that she needed attention.
I agree, Judge and Michael, but here's the only thing I would push back. If I'm the defense counsel here, I would note absolutely, which I believe they tried to do in opening statements and maybe flushed out later, I would bring a witness who describes their living condition before their mother was sick. We have to remember, yes, that house smelled like urine, but they lived there too. So it was neglect to have her smelling like urine, but that means they lived in that condition and was used to it. So my argument would be, yes, a normal person, me or you, we may look at this or hear this condition and say, there's no way this should have existed. But if this is how they lived their entire life, if they weren't taught proper hygiene, if their house always smelled like urine, then they may fall outside of the category of intentional neglect. And I think that's the only they have here because, yes, these conditions that this EMT is describing, they're horrific. And I think the counsel for the prosecution is doing a great job getting these details out. I think the only pushback would be, unfortunately, this family just wasn't very hygienic. And they lived in horrible conditions before and during, and that doesn't mean that they were not trying to take care of their mother.
Yeah, and that's kind of goes along with this theme that I was going to ask you about. Really, the only way to go here, and they touched on it in opening statements, the defense did, that this really was maybe Dad's fault. Dad has passed away. He passed away 3 months after Mom passed away. They referred to him as the primary decision maker. They also said that the kids did everything that Dad asked them to do. And again, I think what they're trying to show is that we get to this definition of who's the caregiver and who had the duty in that house. Is that a way to get around this? Now remember, we're talking about a 40-year-old, Karen is 45, and Michael is 40. So remember that as well.
I don't think so. I don't think it is, because if they know that these conditions are horrific, then they should have stepped in, even if the father is saying, I guess they may say he's saying don't touch her, don't bathe her, whatever it is. If that smell is bad and they're not used to that smell, they should have stepped in. If she has urine and feces and throw up all over her, and that's not how they live, then they should have done something about it. I think the only out there is to say this family is just for lack of a better term, a dirty family, and that's what my defense would be. They just don't know how to take care of themselves, each other. So sometimes they have urine on themselves. Sometimes they have feces on themselves, That's not a big deal to them. I think that's the only way you can go with this, because these are grown-ups who witnessed these conditions. They're horrific conditions. So if they knew these conditions were bad, they would have acted. You have to say they did not understand that these were horrific conditions, that they were used to living like this, so it wasn't a big deal to them.
Yeah, and I just looked it up, and I said that 45 and 40, they do not look 45 and 40. And we were wondering, Judge and I were wondering if maybe there was some kind of issue, mental issue, I don't know.
Absolutely.
Anything like that
you can play that up as
part
well.
of this as well. All right, stand by, Dante. We're going to take a break. When we come back, folks, we'll have more from that EMT guy who arrived at the scene and one of the first people to deal with just the horrific conditions in this home. Keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Ashley Wilcott.
And I'm Michael Ayala. Our coverage continues now in the brother and sister murder trial going on in Tennessee. Karen and Michael Murray are charged with first-degree murder and neglect in the death of their mother.
An EMT is on the stand. He's been testifying in graphic detail about finding the victim in horrific condition. Let's get you back into court where we left off.
When you went into the bedroom where Mrs. Sheila Murray was, do you recall how she was dressed?
She had a white T-shirt on and a diaper.
Okay. Do you recall what the condition of that diaper was?
It was full of feces and urine.
Okay. Did you see anyone else in the home?
There was another male that was in the home. He stayed in the kitchen the biggest part of the time while we were there.
Do you see him in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you point that person out to?
It's the gentleman at the end of the table.
Okay. And at that time, did he appear the same built and shape then that he does now?
No.
What was different about him?
He was a little bigger. He was a little bigger in size. He wasn't as skinny as he is now.
Okay. Please answer any questions that defense counsel has subject to my objections.
Yes, ma'am.
The record will reflect that the witness has identified Mr. Murray seated at counsel table as well. All right, cross-examination, Mr. Byrd.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, while we're getting to that cross-examination, Michael, I wanted to mention the two defendants. You know, seeing them and they're really pitiful. And we contrast that to a Wade Wilson with all the tattoos on his face that didn't react when he just got sentenced to death, and he just looks like a menace. It's very different, these defendants. You feel sad for them.
Ooh, I don't know I don't know if I can go that far. But I will say, you know, we just were showing as we were leaving the shot of Michael Murray. I mean, that does not look like a 40-year-old man to me
at all.
On any level. So there might be some issues there in terms of, you know, that maturity level as well, which again, if they can work it into the defense, great. Didn't hear about it in openings, but maybe we may hear something about that. But no, sadness, no. What I am is angry. The more I hear about what happened to this woman, she was only 68 years old. Yeah. You know?
It is. I do agree, anger, but there's something pitiful about these defendants as well. With that, let's get you back inside the courtroom for cross-examination of the EMT.
You couldn't say whether the sheet had been removed sometime prior to your arrival. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say, but the urine that was in the bed would tell me that there was no sheet on there prior to me getting there.
Okay. Did you know anything about any problems that Mrs. Murray had with incontinence or anything like that? Okay. Now, you talked about her having a diaper that was full, that was pretty full. You couldn't say how long before you got there that she had last, used the bathroom, or how long it had been in that state, could you?
No.
Okay. So when you were treating her, when you talked about putting the wet gauze, I think, and trying to treat her ankle, that was not the point where she cried out whenever you were treating the ankle initially. Is that correct?
No, when we put the wet gauze on there, we didn't stabilize anything at that time. We didn't manipulate her. We just put that on there.
Okay. But what I mean is she didn't cry out or anything?
Not at that time, no.
It wasn't until she was rolled over that she cried out. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember how you all rolled her? Do you remember on her right side, left side? Do you remember?
We rolled away from the injury.
Okay.
You never rolled towards an injury.
Okay. With the, you said she had vomit on her shirt.
Yes.
And you couldn't say how long that had been there either. Is that fair?
It was dried.
Okay. Let's see. Did you notice any saliva or anything around her mouth?
Not that I can recall.
Okay. And with regards to bandaging, I mean, you testified that you didn't see any bandaging, but you couldn't say for certain if there was bandaging on it that was taken off before you arrived. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. Now I would imagine in your job, your first priority is stabilizing people that are in, dire straits. That's correct, I would imagine.
Yes, sir.
Is there ever a situation where you all will take photographs of a scene, or is that something that you leave for police to do?
That is not in our job description.
Sure. You're too busy trying to get people where they need to go, not take pictures. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And with regards to the, only a couple more questions on this. With regards to what you said was the fecal matter around her ankle, you couldn't say how that got there or, how that came to be there, I guess, right?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. I think that's all the questions I have, Mr. Shelton. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dawson, cross-examination on behalf of Mr. Murray.
Mr. Shelton, when were you licensed as an EMT again?
It was January of 2009.
And was that as a basic EMT?
It was as an EMT IV tech is what it was.
Okay, and is that the highest level of EMT?
No, sir.
Is that a medium level of EMT?
Yes.
Okay. And have you gone for that higher qualification since then?
I did at one point.
Okay. You arrived at this home, it was about 8:36 in the evening, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you happen to remember how hot it was that day?
I don't remember the exact temperature, but it was hot.
It was hot?
Yes.
Okay. It was in August, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know if the family had any central heat and air by chance?
I do not.
Okay, but it was hot,
Yes.
right? And you did see the three family members there, is that correct?
Yes.
You saw Mr. Murray, you saw Michael Murray, and Karen Murray.
Yes.
They were all there with their mother and wife.
Yes.
And you said that you got her out of this house with the drop sheet, is that correct?
Yes.
And the drop sheet, you used the four corners. You got one corner at her head, is that right? One corner at her feet, and then a corner on either side of her?
Hold on. You would say yes or no out loud. You're being recorded.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
You could accompany your nods with an audible response.
Yes, ma'am.
We need that
I'll ask the questions again. So the four corners, one corner is at the head,
Yes.
one corner is at the feet,
Yes.
and then the two corners at the side.
Yes.
And so did you use the firemen to get her out?
They assisted us.
They assisted you?
Yes.
Okay. And how many people were hands-on to take her out on that particular draw sheet?
5.
5. Okay. At the level of EMT that you were at, do you ever...
We do need to take another break. When we come back, we will have a new witness on the stand. Stay here with us on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Action.
action was just to pull out the revolver, and it went off.
Two people accidentally shot.
Alec Baldwin was the actor on set. Alec Baldwin? Yes, sir.
Hurry, hurry, hurry was the motto on the set.
Right away, let's reload.
Alec Baldwin claims he didn't pull the trigger. Well, the FBI disagrees.
It's not going to fire until you pull the trigger.
They really do have to show that he couldn't care less.
The case against Alec Baldwin premieres Sunday, 9/8 Central on Court TV.
All right, folks, before we get back to court, let's bring back in trial and civil attorney and Temple University Law School professor Dante Mills. Dante, you notice both of them have their own attorney. Is there any scenario you can think of where maybe one of them is found to be responsible for this and the other walks away?
Maybe. Michael, Judge, I was listening to your last conversation. Judge, I understand what you're saying, where you want to be sympathetic for these two, and I think it's the attorney's job to make them. And Michael, you were talking about like how the son doesn't look to be anywhere near 40. That may be the only thing that distinguishes them, is if something comes out that says that one has some kind of developmental issues or cognitive issues, that may be what distinguishes them, but they're both adults. So I think they're going to be looked at the same throughout this process. But I think it's the defense attorney's obligation to make them sympathetic. And they have to do that. I, again, think that by saying that this is just how they were raised, and they were raised wrong. They didn't understand the appropriate way to take care of yourself, so they couldn't take care of their mother. The questions for the witness or this EMT from the defense kind of shows that they're going to be saying it wasn't that bad. I think that's a losing scenario to say, well, maybe the sheet just came off when you got there, or maybe she urinated or defecated on herself shortly before you got there. To say it's not that bad, I don't think is a winning scenario. So we'll see where this goes. But if they continue down that line, I don't think it's going to be difficult for the jury to find both of these defendants responsible.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Dante, because, Judge, you remember in opening statements, the issue was whether they knowingly neglected. So the idea is they didn't know, and they want to sort of minimize the things that were going on there.
Right, right. And I think to your point, it really is a mistake to at all focus on it wasn't that bad, because clearly it was that bad from opening, and now an EMT whose testimony supports it was really bad. And the reality in this scenario is, I think that that just the state's going to keep hammering on that. Having said that, stand by.